Yeah, it wasn't the
Nobody, a lot of people put them on the thirty, but we go. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a couple people, they're gonna be fighting.
Yeah.
And I've been.
No, and yeah, part of the challenge is they incorporate the art books into that. Yeah, which I think, I know.
Oh, shoot.
I just learned that that's something that has been taking place for years and years. So I think that that's like, yeah. So I'm going to be showing this, but.
Thanksgiving
here. So that's along the way, you know, and if I wanted to respond to these are great.
Did you check? Slide.
Yeah, so this is what she did share is that the indicators, these were off. There was actually two that was way off, and then the rest was one off, and that's when I did the calculation. So but higher, I rounded up. Here it rounded down, but the two that were and then the second one was just make sure I'm not leaving out the gap and avoiding talking about.
Other folks.
Okay, so. I mean, there were lots of things.
Well, always from you.
And I was like, oh, it's that day.
What's near standard? We have.
I'm actually going to talk about that. Yeah. So if I don't hit that, would you ask that question? Okay.
That's my trying. There's nails that are attached to them.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I didn't suspect it. Oh, that's the one. Yeah. Okay, Terry.
Ready.
Ready?
What's that time frame? So I'm looking at her.
So now that you can. Ready? I would like to call to order the attention, the study session of the Mount North Altos Union High School District on the topic of data. And so the preliminary business is that we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. And let the record show that all the trustees are present, 4 of us in this room, and Sanjay out there in cyberspace. Teleconferencing from a lobby in Taiwan.
Is it midnight there, Sanjay?
I think he's in silent.
Oh, wait, I got it back.
I'm here. I'm just muted.
8 hours earlier.
I'm here. I'm just muted.
Okay. All
I
right.
can hear you.
So the study session will mostly be conducted by Terry because she's the one that's presenting the data. So Terry, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you. And I am presenting the data, but I want to first acknowledge my Ed Services team who spends weeks querying and sorting and organizing and charting and putting together even the very professional presentation that's the template to our conversation today. So a shout out to my very talented team. And I'm excited for this study session. I really hope that this is a nice dialogue. We're going to be reviewing not just data, but some of the structures that are in place to support the data. And I'm eager to also hear from you guys on just questions and thoughts and ideas as I've appreciated in my 2 years here, the teamwork that the two of us, our two groups really have together. And on a little sentimental note, this will be my last time working with Fiona and Debbie, and so it's a special time for me to do the annual review on your last day with us here. So that's an honor. With that said, we'll be covering, and I'm the controller of the clicker, we'll be covering the following agenda. Give me a second to practice the clicker.
Should be on the click on presentation.
Okay, there we go. So we're gonna review the agenda in the following order. And at the same time, I'll be asking us to work through our binder and refer to certain data points that are highlighted in the presentation, but not necessarily drawn out from the graphs of the binder. I'll try to keep this to an hour. I know I have a lot of stuff to cover within then. I tend to overplan, and one of my also teaching habits is that I'm a mad tweaker. And I apologize, but you'll see changes in the presentation from what was originally submitted, because as I go over practice, I can't help but make little tweaks or I find little things wrong. And I'll try to point them out as we go if there was any changes with that. So, little cliche, all hands on deck. It takes a village, but it really does. Students are the center of our work, and not one entity is responsible or can hold and support students. It really takes all of us working together, directly or indirectly, from our community to those that are, quote unquote, in the trenches, working right with our students. And a lot of what we're looking at today draws on the work of this partnership that we see up here, which is also founded in our mission and our core values of what we want when we refer to student success. And our mission and core values is what guides our LCAP goals. Sorry, I'm going to go backwards. It guides our framework that, again, puts our students at the top and really communicates what does it take from us to be able to truly, equitably, social, emotionally support our students, all of us working together to be able to support student achievement. So when we talk about students, who are we referring to? This is the slice of our district. Today's presentation, actually, let me just take a step back. Today's presentation, like typical annual reviews, are showing the data of the two comprehensive schools. So I'll do the district view of the two comprehensive schools. I look forward to Suzanne doing an Alta Vista presentation a few months down the road. And next month, the comprehensives, Los Altos and Mountain View, are doing their specific presentations. I know I have the comprehensive Los Altos and Mountain View data specific in here, but I'm doing district. I won't be going into the site specific.
So, quick question, Sarah. When you refer to anything in here as a district-wide statistic, it's not just the two comprehensive. It is.
It is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Thank you for clarifying that.
But it does include middle college.
Yes, because they are enrolled within our two, and college now, because they are enrolled in our two comprehensive data points. And with that, it also includes option B. So this is our profile of our student population at the district. It has been shifting over the years in terms of who are our students. A couple of points that I want to communicate as I was going through the data and really wrapping my head around and learning some of our categories that have been established for several years. Our Latino regular, the Latino regular ed population does include our reclassified fluent English proficient students, our RFEP. I think some of us have thought that those two were parsed separately, but it includes both. It includes the RFEP. Moving forward into the years, if we'll continue that, I want to talk with my team, and I think it might have some benefits of separating the two, but that was a good data point to know. I also want to point out that our free and reduced population over the last 2 years with universal screening and the pandemic and the free and reduced lunch applications not needing to be turned in to get that free lunch, we've seen a change in that population being reported. And so that 11%, in my opinion, is lower than what it should be.
And just another quick question. Historically, has it been in the 20s?
18 to 22 was roughly where that gauge is. Thank you. The last thing I want to point out is our 504 population. Over the last 2 years, it has grown by 150 students. And I know when we were doing our CSACE work and looking at the demographics of our 504 population, we saw that 23% of our 504s are Asian, 56% of our 504s are Caucasian, and 15% of our 504s are Latino. So when you look at our overall demographics, you see that that's not quite parity. And so not only are we having conversations of what is a 504 and what type of accommodations do they get with what their needs are, but also the inequity that those 504s are providing for students that are not getting access, and we'll be doing some work around that.
Okay, so Terry,
So-
if I could just, if I could ask, so yeah, just on that point, so the 504, do we know how many are referred by teachers and counselors to 504, and how many are referred by parents?
You know, Sanjay, I would be able to get the data of how many 504s come in from middle school. I do not believe that we record by whom's doing the referrals, if it's within their high school career. So, you know, with that point, Sanjay, I just want to note to everybody that I know there's going to be great questions that are asked. Some of them, hopefully, we can answer and resolve here, but some of them I'll take some notes on, and we'll need to go back and work with my team to try to pull up that data. And so, Sanjay, we could get the data of those who are coming in from the middle schools with 504s, but we do not track who's doing the referrals.
Okay.
I would say most of them are referred by, are brought by parents. A few by an SAT or SST meeting. But I don't know that population breakdown. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So with that said, we have our population of students and understand the profile. We know our core values and what we want to, how we in our framework to support. One of the great structures that the district has is it's established committees and teams that supports the values and the focus of MVLA. We have two different wellness committees pulling from either a collaborative of a very diverse, including community members, and we have an advisory, or that's our collaborative, and we have an advisory, which is a smaller group that focuses on action. We have an equity alliance committee. We have a professional planning committee that focuses not just on supporting teachers professionally, but a differentiated approach to all staff. As we saw in the earlier picture, it's an all hands on deck of directly or indirectly supporting our students. We have a family partner. We have a family partnership council, as community partnership has been a continued value, not just with us, but with our community with us. And so we're providing that. We have an admin council, so it's a time that all administrators are able to come together, learn together, share best practices together. And lastly, we have site leadership teams that pull together their coordinators and their site leaders to be able to work on the specific needs that they have on their sites. And all of us working in conjunction, again, all arrows aligned to our goals. So starting now to move into the data, we get a big broad stroke, and I think you might notice that the theme is broad strokes and thinking outside of the box creatively with some of these artistic renditions that Shawnee Beecham added. First of all, there's some comparable data that we see between the 2019 and the 2020, the 2022 data, the 1920 and 21-22 data. I say that because learning loss has been a big fear that our nation has had due to the pandemic. The second or the sub bullet is that the 1920-2021 data needs to be used sparingly, because that's the data at which we went into the pandemic. We closed down school. We went completely asynchronous for an entire quarter. We did credit, no credit. The next year, we were completely online with synchronous, and it really was just throwing a lot of variables. And so knowing that circumstantial situation, we'll take that into account if we see any kind of blips. But comparing our 18, 19, and 2021 data can be a good reference of was there a significant learning loss that took place within the pandemic? I think that we're going to see as we go through the data, the answer is no. We do have some data points where we see a certain a subpopulation that has dipped, and we'll talk about that. Let's see, we'll go over our goals and targets. In comparison to the state and county, we are significantly stronger. I think we need to use that data point sparingly too, because it's not apples to apples with our population versus the other populations of the county and state schools. And we continue to see a gap in certain demographics. And so we'll be talking about, what are we doing or what do we need to start doing to support that gap? And my last point is, even when the data is showing something concerning, I believe we need to approach it. That data is not a hammer. It's not about shaming or blaming. It's a flashlight that really spotlights or shines a light on something that needs some more focus or growth, and could be a way that we then direct our actions forward. So our lens as we go through this is, how did we achieve this data? What are the practices that led to these outcomes? Were these practices equitable? So is everybody getting access and finding success in these practices? What can we learn from one another? Meaning our two sites. They have a lot of creative work and programs and initiatives that they're starting. And so can we learn from one that's success and bring it to the other? And how do we turn this data into actions? So I'm going to go to page 11 in my binder, but it's what's on this page. I will point out that there are a few corrections that I made on these data points. Our targets were targets that were set by the district back in, I believe, 2018-ish, 2017, 2018. They haven't been adjusted yet. We can talk about that, but you'll see that we're still pretty close to near them. And usually you make the change if you're far exceeding, right? So starting with our no Fs, we had a target of 90 freshmen with no Fs. We had a target of 95%. We're at 92%. I just want to spotlight that even though we're not 95%, 92% of our freshmen not having one single F is pretty remarkable. In 2020, as well as 2021, we were at 89%. So we have seen a growth with that. Our overall average GPA of 3.0 or better is at 81%. So we, I need to be looking at the slides, is at 78%. So we're just a little bit over that, but we have seen growth because it was at 76 and 75% in 20 and then in 21. You can see our honors no class, we're just a tinge under with our target of 50%. In 2020, we had 43%. So we've been pretty close to that early 40s in our honors, one or more honors classes. With one or more AP classes, we're at 51. And that's where we toggled over the last few years, anywhere between 50 and 53%. There's been some oscillation. AP scores of 3 or better, 84% of our students taking an AP class get a 3 or better score. That's pretty remarkable. And that has also been somewhat consistent with a toggle between 83 to 86% in that area over the last few years. Just kind of like a little up and down. Freshmen 2.0 GPA or better, 95% of our freshmen. I believe that is just remarkable. So kudos to our freshmen. And that's been on the rise. So it was 73%, then 90%, then 89%. So going from 19, 20 to 21, and now it's up to 95%. Algebra, we're at 90%. So just a little bit under that target, but that's 90% of our students taking Algebra 3 pass with a 3 or better. And that's been somewhat close to where it's been over the last 3 years, 90%, 89%, 91%. A to G completion, 78%. So we're not quite to our target goal. It was 76 and 77% over the last 3 years. It went up to 85% last year, but we'll talk about why that pass no pass, AB 104. And lastly, 98% graduation rate that has increased from 95 in 21 and 96 in 20. And so even though we might be a slight dip under some of those, we are definitely seeing growth in those areas of really reaching our target areas.
Before you go on, can I make a comment? question regarding the no at the end of ninth grade and the freshman with GPA 2.0 or better. Is there some way to tell whether that difference is attributable to implementation of equitable grading?
That's a great question. That's a question that we welcome. As we know, in our partnership, we were talking about equitable grading. And so, is anyone taking notes, by the way?
Well, we're recording,
Oh,
but perhaps we could look at the depth of implementation and do a line.
Right,
And then you could, at the same time, then do a line that shows the GPA of the ninth graders to just see if there's a correlation.
right,
It'll be hard to tell causation, but you could see some of the
Okay.
correlation.
yeah. And the other question, more of a comment also, I'm sorry, Kieran, did you-
Go ahead, finish, I'll jump in.
so I'm a little curious about the AP class, 50%
Yeah.
more with AP form, or AP class, and same for honors. It seems to me a better one would be percentage of students with at least one honors or AP course,
Yeah.
and then have a separate one, percentage of students with an AP course.
I hear
That was
you.
actually exactly my comment, because the metric is actually one or more honors or AP. That's actually, so I believe that when you combine those two, we've like far exceeded the metric.
Yeah, so it was separated a few years ago. One of the reasons is, so the AP class, first of all, let me just clarify with this 51%, there's hardly any AP classes offered to freshmen. So automatically that looks a little skewed, like our whole student body, only half of them are taking an AP, when really we're only looking at 75% of our student body having access to AP classes. So that number, we need to take that into account.
And the simple fix would be say, let's just do it for 10th through 12th grade.
We've had that conversation.
Right,
If we really wanted to eliminate the freshmen to give us a cleaner cross section of that. There's a lot of classes, not a lot, there's plenty of classes at the freshman level that are honors. And so wanting to separate the two, because we felt that one didn't show freshmen very well, the other overshowed freshmen. And so if you combine the two, it just may have conflated the data. And this was, back in 2018, 2017, when the two were separated for those reasons. I think the sites were actually also asking for some separation, that it was helpful for them when they were looking at their numbers and working with their teams of, who's taking our honors and who's taking our APs. And it was just easier access for them to do some deeper dives.
so maybe that's something we can think about, whether there's some reclassification there that gives all the information we want.
Thank you.
Yeah, my personal goal in it wasn't to have everybody taking both an honors and an AP. My personal goal was to have kids stretch themselves, and the hope and the metric was to have them grab whatever was best for them, right?
Yep.
So,
Thank you. Okay. So jumping then into those metrics, doing a deeper dive into our board indicators, we'll start with our graduation rate. A lot to be proud of. 96%, 95%, 98% this year. The majority of the students that are in this 2% for 21-22 graduation class were students that were transitioning to the adult transition program that do get counted as non-grads, but actually their schooling has been documented in their IEP since the moment they chose that, they were in that path. So I think that that's a little misleading. And another percentage in that 2% is our newcomer EL students that come in as a junior or senior with no or very little credits on their transcript. And so we also give them a 5th year. And so these are actually not non-grads. These are students that very much deserve and need that additional year or years, because ATP can go all the way up to the age of 22 or 23. And so that's a little bit misleading in that piece. And I think it's very helpful to know that that calculation, as well as CalPADS, calculates how many people actually diploma out at the end of the 22 school year and don't take into consideration those that deserve that extension. So with that said, We have, higher graduation rates than our state and county. We have seen an increase of graduation rates across all demographics. I highlighted on the left column that we've actually seen a nice growth in our demographics for grad rates in our African-American population, an increase of 8%, in our English learner population, an increase of 5%, and a Latino EL population, an increase of 6%. So a nice, exceeding a lot of our other populations. So nice to see a good increase in graduation rates for our populations there.
So Terry, let me ask a question about the kids, the students that do not graduate with their class in their 12th year that go on. Do we follow the statistics on how they fare afterwards?
Yeah, and actually, if a student is given a 5th year, let's say EL student, and they graduate that 5th year, they get marked as a graduate for that following year.
Okay, so they don't count in the year that they should have had.
Correct. We are not able to backlog them.
But they do count towards the other.
Yes.
So they give us more than one way to measure graduation rate, and so they are completers
Yeah.
and graduates, but they don't go into our graduation rate because that is a cohort rate.
Is that the same for students who finished in the summer? I know we had a batch of students who
We do count them in our grad rates.
they count, okay, so
Yeah.
if they finish by the end of the summer, they count in their.
Correct. So
Yeah.
we don't start to pull this data until late July, early August for that reason.
Is that always, or is that just part of the pandemic?
Always.
It's always.
Mhm.
And they count until October, there's a deadline.
For CalPADS reporting, yep.
Now, colleges must do this quite a bit different because people graduate 3.5 years, 1.5 years, I mean, all different. And so I wonder how they determine if their graduation rates for their reporting.
They track it at 4-year grads, 6-year grads, 8-year grads. They do all of the tracking, having been a part of that tracking process for universities.
So one more question on the 5th year.
Yeah.
So they're counted as the total population for an additional year then, right?
For the following year.
Right.
Yes,
Okay,
that
so
is
they
correct.
just get to count twice.
Yeah. And unfortunately, if
don't-
they end up not finishing that 5th year, then they're counted twice as a non-grad. Same with their ATP. Sometimes, they go till 21 and they decide I'm done. And then they end up getting counted as a non-grad on CalPADS, not us, for that reason. And so I think that there's some wrong misinformation, but I understand how they need to audit and all of that stuff. I will also want to note that this year, 2022, per AB 104, students were able to continue to graduate under the state graduation rates of 130 if they choose, and that was through consultation with families and making sure that there was no way that they could have completed the 220. And so we did have 48 students that graduated under AB 104 between the two districts. I don't have a demographic breakdown of who those students are. I can get it, but I don't have it handy. Equally, well, I don't know if I'd say equally as important graduation rate, because I think graduation is a great open door to anybody's next steps, but also making sure a variety of doors are open is A to G eligibility or A to G completion. We have seen some consistency across the years, which again is showing that our students are, not showing that huge learning loss or challenges with their grades compared to the 18-19 data. 2021 data, that was when students were able to choose again under AB 104 if they wanted to go pass fail and replacement of letter grades, which means that if you got a D, you could choose pass, and UCs included counted that as being eligible.
Oh,
And so we saw a nice bump up because of that very reason.
yeah, you just explained what the question is going to do.
Yeah. Off to the right-hand side is just a reminder of what it takes to be A to G eligible. Somewhat of a rigorous pathway for students requiring college prep, college level C or better courses, a heavy load, and we want to make sure that we're providing this opportunity for all students. I appreciate Dr. Meyer at this point saying, as we're going to see in the data in a little bit, why are we offering classes if it's not A to G? So let's take a look at our classes and ask why we're putting students in there before we start doing that, because we don't want to shut anybody out of having the ability to meet A to G eligibility. And going through the A to G data over the summer, as I was just doing my CalPads auditing and double checking, our special ed students who are in life skills, resource, some SAI classes, none of those are A to G, pulls them out of this eligibility, as well as our EL students who could be in an EL class, let's say an EL world history class or an EL biology class, and getting high school graduation requirement, but that's not UC approved, or sorry, A to G approved. And so therefore, our two biggest subgroups that are not A to G eligible are our SPED and our RFEP / English learners. And so really wanting to take a moment and say, okay, what are our classes that are not A to G? And let's ask some challenging questions to make sure we want to continue down that pathway.
I have a question on that. Would there be some other statistic we could have that people, they were all A to G, but you didn't so-called complete as far as the state system calls it, but you did take it, like that you got a D. I mean, you at least
That's the third big bucket of the non-A to G completers are those that had Ds.
Yeah.
And again, I had the opportunity to really dive into it this summer, and I would say a fair amount of the Ds were seniors, right? These students either had a D and made it up during summer school, and then they get to their senior year and they get a D in a class and they don't want to take it during summer school. And so, I think that that's a good question that we need to be working with our senior class. They're almost to the finish line, and then something happens and they're out. So
Did you see it second semester?
both.
Okay.
It did seem to trend one or the other.
Okay.
So
I don't remember if I did, to be honest.
So I have a question about the classes we offer now. Are all of them that we're offering that could be A through G, be A through G?
Yes.
Because there was a time when I think Mountain View had yearbook become through A through G,
Yes.
but Los Altos had not. Is Los Altos A through G now?
I'm just told no, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. What requirement would you have to do to make it A to G?
You have to submit your curriculum work that includes what you're covering in the units, what sample lessons would be, what the book that you're using, under what A to G criterion would you be asking for? So like English elective, visual art elective, and then somebody evaluates it and deems if it is college prep worthy or not.
Okay.
Well, it might be worthwhile to find out what classes could become A through G requirement and what we could do to make them that way.
Yeah, I have a course list that I had somebody run for me last week that had that whole column. When I was meeting with our principals, I was skimming through it and naming some classes, and I missed yearbook. So, but I do have that.
I just
Yes.
remember that one because I was working with Brigida and Margarita before she left, and we had done that huge spreadsheet where it had an indication of what A through G was and aligning class names between the two districts where the classes were exactly the same. However, we call them different names, which is really confusing, which I've always thought it would be nice to align in some way.
Yeah.
But there were some that stood out specifically just yearbook, wondering why, we had a difference between the two campuses.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the time, I'm going to be kind of moving quickly forward. So I do want to point out that, our AVID and our 504 students, even though they're a little bit under our Asian and Caucasian population, they are holding pretty strong with A to G completion. Our Latino regular ed as well at around 50%. I do think that those are two areas, though, that we could improve on doing some stronger work with, making sure that they have the opportunity to be getting A to G credit for the classes that they're in, as well as what are the opportunities that we're having and using our A to G completion grant funds. What are the opportunities that we're giving them to do credit recovery in a timely manner, as well as if they're at that D, how are we supporting them to get access like tutor.com, push in support, using various types of ed tech that differentiates the lesson to help them access that curriculum. I'm going to move into AP unless there's any questions. Okay, so
I'm going to have a whole lot of questions later.
okay.
Start my new term.
So if you're following the binder at all, the AP starts on page 62. It kind of toggles around just a little bit. So the overall enrollment that we see in our AP has been pretty steady at around that 50-ish range. Like I said, we really need to take the freshmen out of that. Freshmen have access to AP world language classes, and some take an AP computer science, but that's pretty much what they have access in terms of AP. So just note that with that 50%. We do see a dip that has occurred in our BIPOC population, our Black, Indigenous, and people of color students. And this is, around 7% decrease, and a reminder as well with our African American population that increase of, 4 to 8% over the years, with a population of around 77 students. A decrease of 4 or 5 students get taken an A to G class makes a glaring distinction on a graph. And so, just really wanting to make that small population understood. If we scroll, and if you would follow me here, we're going to go to the AP section, and because this is also where enrollment is at. And I'm going to go to the very back page, which is page 112. This is showing all of our AP classes and who's enrolled in these AP classes. So what we see, or what our overall goal is supporting access to AP and honors classes for all of our students. And having this data can help us answer questions of which classes seem more challenging or less interesting for certain populations, and that helps us do a deeper dive into the why. One aspect that we see is that our AP STEAM classes, that's our science, our technologies, our engineering, our arts, and our math, tend to have the lowest demographic parity. Some of them also tend to have low gender parity, with the exception to AP Environmental Science. Also looking at enrollment, those that do have a more demographic parity or a higher diversity of students in the class are AP English Language. That class at Mountain View has been a class that the AVID has the majority, if not all of their students take, as a way of just giving them, supporting them in an AP class for the first time, giving them all the support, as well as really ramping up their reading, writing, listening, speaking skills. And so I do think that is one of the reasons why we see good diversity in AP English Lit. Again, AP Environmental Science, AP Human Geography, and AP Spanish Language. And I think, with AP Environmental Science and AP Human Geography, there's some good questions that we could ask as to why. Why does this class seem more accessible? And what could we learn that we could bring in or scaffold in to some of our other classes that are not showing that same diversity?
And what
Well, I
grade
think so. I mean,
AP?
go ahead, Nellie.
Oh, Avid. Sorry, Sanjay.
Yeah, so the question was AP English Language Comp, what grade level is it at? 10th grade at Mountain View and 11th grade at Los Altos.
But did it move this year? This year it switched, right?
This year it stayed the same, 10th grade and 11th grade.
So next year it's switching.
I think that's still a conversation being had, but I'm pretty certain they're going to keep it and just work on some scaffolds that supports the students going into that class. And I just looked at Kip and she said it'll continue next year to be a 10th grade class. Interesting. But I do appreciate that the administration, the leadership at Mountain View are looking into good questions of, is this serving the right purpose for our students? Sanjay, please go ahead.
So you asked the question about why do we have a more diversified group of students taking AP Environmental Science, right? And what was the other one?
Human Geography.
Human Geography. I mean, you must have an idea as to why, and why AP Bio, AP Physics, AP Maths, like Calc and all that are not. I mean, I think there's a level difference, right?
So I agree, but I also want to know the question of why are we not making the curriculum accessible so a student can at least try in that class without, like, what's the essential standards that we could start with? And in fact, I want to, I'll go to the next slide real fast because Sanjay, I think this kind of builds into your question. So this is showing us our overall career score, 3 or higher scores in AP. A lot to be proud of, right? 85% or higher. College Board has quoted that schools whose AP passing rates exceed the national average of 60% are encouraged to find ways to involve others in their classes. And so I agree with you that some of our classes are really rigorous in the skills and the previous knowledge that you have to go into.
Yeah.
But even hearing College Board, what are some ways that we could get more students into this class that may not get a 3 or 4 on the exam, but could access just the content and the essential standards and be in a part of that environment? And
so then we would need to start at an earlier level, right? If we really really want to make this a goal or a commitment, because for AP Calc, for example, or AP Bio, AP Physics, you need to have a strong background in the earlier science courses or earlier math courses and take the honors versions of those. So you have that prerequisite, not only just knowledge, but the skills, because that's those honors courses are basically getting the students prepared for, is the amount of not just the rigor of the course, but the study skills you need to have, the not only the quality of studying you need to do, but the quantity of studying you have to do, the number of probably hours you need to spend per week to be able to get through that course. And I'm not saying that, yes, getting an A, but even getting a C grade is not necessarily easy in the AP courses. So I think if you're really serious about wanting to do that, we have to start at an earlier level to prepare students to be able to have that mindset that they're going to take, that if they're going to take an AP Calc, AP or the AP Science courses, that they need to start taking the honors courses for all the prereqs and get ready for that.
I agree with that. And I do agree that the teachers right now could use strategies like AVID strategies and various ways to help students access the curriculum that perhaps we're overlooking. So I think it's a yes and yes, we can look at our systems and making sure that we're vertically aligning to support the skills that are required. And I think, that whole professional learning and ongoing support to reflect on who's not accessing and why and what can we do. It takes both, in my opinion. Sorry, Fiona.
Yeah, just a note that this district's approach and our approach to APs is not to have our students get 1s and 2s. It's not, right. It's not, they sign a contract saying that they're going to take the test right. These are not, I'm going to dip my toe in the water kinds of classes, or that is not the approach that is presented to students in our district. And we even have a goal that 85% or more of them will get a 3 or better. So it feels to me like we also have a big messaging issue. We're going to want to try to say, oh no, this is, anybody, yes, we have open enrollment to these classes. You don't have to test into them, but everybody's welcome, whatever your score you get on this test. Maybe you don't want to take the test. Maybe you want to take the curriculum, but you don't want to take the test. But none of those options exist, and none of that messaging exists right now within this district.
I couldn't agree more. Having conversations with teachers about encouraging access and increasing diversity in the classes. And that means that numbers may fluctuate, because that means you have a more heterogeneous class, right? One of the responses that we get is, will you give me permission to not have a 4.2 average on my, because they do feel that pressure from the teachers, from the perceived messaging. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and the teachers too, right? For sure, because we're all looking at the data, the average scores out of a bio course, and we don't have it attributed to a certain teacher, but we've got the average scores out of the class. And so, yeah, so if this is the intention and we want kids just to give it a go, and it's okay to get it to get whatever grade they're gonna get in the class, whether or not they want to take the test, the whole messaging top to bottom changes.
Agreed.
Well, and then. Is it part of the rules or is there flexibility of not weighting the grades? In honors and or AP?
That's a very different topic, but
I mean, I think it fits in with it partly though, in terms of the students.
But wouldn't you want it weighted though? I mean, as a student, you would go in and say, right, you wouldn't ever say, oh, no, don't worry about that, I don't need it weighted.
That's what I'm saying.
some districts do not, Fremont, for example, does not weigh.
Pretty much you doesn't.
But we're talking about selective weighting.
Exactly.
That makes no sense.
And as a parent, I can just say the weighting was very valuable because it showed that you took a more rigorous course and it was a way to balance that. That being said, some colleges don't look at the weighting, they just take it out, but the weighting came about, I can say about 40 years ago when people were taking a very advanced course load in some APs. And then when they had the valedictorian, et cetera, it really was not reflected. So it comes from that origin. So I believe some places have taken it away for philosophical reasons. But your question was.
This isn't really the place to discuss it at large, but it does feed into people's point of view of whether to take an AP or not, whether they have to get an A or they have to get an A plus compared to just an A and so on. If we weight things.
Yeah, it definitely goes into
stress.
But doesn't it
Right.
incentivize a student who's leery about a course
Right, yeah.
to go in and say, well, even if I get a C, it's going to be a B
Yeah.
on my GPA.
Now that's the other side of it. So I just think that the whole weighting thing is a discussion I would really like to hear more about.
We can certainly look into that and share, but I definitely do know many students who say, okay, I'm going to take this risk. I'm going to go out of my comfort zone and take, AP calculus BC, and I'm going to get a B minus, but in their computation, they do feel that it evens out and they've learned a lot.
I do want to throw out a risk, right? Because we want to break the stereotype threats. Being the only person that doesn't look like you in the class is very hard. And sometimes feeling like your peers don't want to hear from you or hear your ideas is equally as hard, right? So what's that inclusive classroom we're creating? But by encouraging a larger heterogeneous group in our classes, if they were to get a D, great, they get the grade weight, it looks like a C on their GPA. They do not get A to G credit for that. And so we really need to be thinking about that A to G eligibility with all of our students in the classes and what that detriment really means when they get a D. So I'm going to move into.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah,
I mean, we used to have the equal opportunity program, isn't that right?
Uh-huh.
That encouraged students. I mean, there was some incentivized to do it, right? And we haven't had that for a couple of years, I believe. Is that
It was a 2-year program
Yeah.
under Dave Grissom.
right? So I'm
it's
wondering if you've seen, I mean, it might be something to look at. During that time in the program, what was the enrollment that we had versus what the enrollment is now? Because that was a program that encouraged students of, all levels to reach out and try to take an AP program. And I remember seeing an increase in our AP classes during that time. But I just wonder if since then that we're not offering it, we've seen, we have had an incentivized program, if we've seen a decline. And if so, what did the program offer that possibly we could look back at what they did to leverage off of how we can encourage students to take AP classes again.
And I want to agree with that and amplify the idea of pairing an AVID class with an AP class, because then you have a cohort of students that then have a similar study need within the AVID class.
exactly.
That has been a successful strategy across, the nation, because it stops that one student going in on their own, feeling isolated, and then it's also a support group for those.
So is that what we're seeing at Mountain View's AP English class?
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And I will say, for the most part, our AVID program with some AP classes do cohort students into the class, that has a very low diversity within that class, because we know by research that students that feel comfortable and have opportunity to be included, and again, inclusivity is big on, you know, asking the teacher to support those skills, makes a big success rate with the student population. And so we do that in certain classes that have that low, typically a low enrollment diversity. So again, we're just mindful of.
I could ask, could we just simply just have a survey and ask, you know, the different demographic groups to ask them why they don't take the AP courses, or why they're not taking the AP courses, or turn the question around as to what would be needed to take an AP course? Could we simply just have a survey that we ask the students?
Yeah, and I'm pretty certain we probably have that data. I do know that our counselors, when a student would drop a class, and they did this several years ago at one of the high schools as a way of really trying to see if there's trends when they dropped an AP or honors class, of asking why. And I can pull that data up. This was many years ago that I remember having the conversation. I was an assistant principal at the time, and I remember the trends being, I don't feel comfortable, or it feels too hard, or I'm just not interested. There was a couple trends that we pulled out. And, you know, one of the encouragements that we had was, go talk to your teacher, get your teacher to sign off that you're dropping the class. And then we had conversations with teachers that said, when a student comes to drop your class, sit down with them and learn why they're dropping the class, and really try to map out, like, look, you can do this. Here's what you need to do. I believe in you. Because those words from a teacher to a student, like, oh, this person really wants me here and they think I can do it, is a game changer. So, you know, Sanjay, I know that we have data that we've already collected on this over the years.
Quick question on the A to G problem with C's and D's. So suppose the student's getting a D. Is it possible to give the student the exam from the regular A to G course? If you get to C, bingo, you got your C.
Just drop the course from AP to regular English.
Just cross it off, right? It's no longer weighted, you got an unweighted C.
Yes, that really is the teacher's prerogative, but you absolutely can. I've worked with AP teachers who will change the course to a non-AP and then give them the grade that would have gone with that. But that would be the teacher decision on the
I think it's
grade.
something you should encourage. You can encourage students to take the risk.
I've seen it really encourage students, and especially English learners, perhaps in a course like US history that might not have a lot of background information for them.
Right, that's part of what we do.
It might work better even with honors than AP, but because AP kind of goes with the exams. With the
Well, what I'm saying is you don't give the AP exam, you give the regular course exam.
except for sometimes the curriculums are a little bit different.
Yeah, but I mean, it gives the
And
student
like
a shot.
my son teaches chemistry and honors chemistry, and he says there's just not enough alike, and they don't do things in the same order.
Can I do a time check and a recommendation?
Mm-hmm.
We have an hour from 6 to 7 and closed. The item is the Grant Avenue property. I believe we could get the info, we could discuss that in a half hour or even 45 minutes and add 15 minutes to the data report. That would be my recommendation.
I would be for that. Does the board have any objection?
I think we're all in favor.
We'll go for that.
Okay. And Spot, you have more time.
Okay, so I'm about 40% through my slide.
I think we
Where
could
did
get
it go?
We did it wrong. You ever listen to a podcast or audiobook and you move the speed to like 1.5? So here we go.
But the other item we have had a lot of back and forth on already, so I think that we could expedite the closed session.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. So moving from AP tests to our state test, our SBAC, our county office reached out to all of the districts about a month ago. And was very supportive in messaging to their community because of the big dip that they saw in the scores, and wanted to be supportive to the schools in that dip that they've seen. We have a lot to be proud of. We have not seen a dip in either our ELA nor our math scores. And, you know, I think that talks a lot about our students and the hard work from our students put in, our teachers and our quality hard work and education that our teachers provide, the systems that we set up over the pandemic of retaining our teachers, and during the heavy COVID times, keeping subs in-house. So even when a teacher was out for 5 or 10 days, we had a high quality teacher sub in that classroom providing education. And so again, you know, if we went back to that second slide with the all hands on deck, that's just one more example of how we all came together to be able to continue to provide support for our students. So with our English language arts, we saw overall that our students were meeting at 85% or higher. In fact, the board indicators is slightly different than the SBAC than how the CASP reports it. With meets, exceeds, what are the other ones? Meets, exceeds, far below and below. And so there was typically 4 categories in the beginning, and now the CASP is reporting it into 3 categories. Exceeds means you're either at the meet or you're above. The near, there's no language of what near means. It just says that you're near the standard. And the not meets is that you're far below what that meeting is. But they don't give, I haven't found yet any kind of quantitative language between those 3. I'm not done giving up though, because I'm sure it's out there. We would, you know, it would only make sense if we know that they just didn't make it
Does that have to
easily.
do with the percentile scores?
So it doesn't, so they calculate the test on a number scale. I think it's out of 2,000 or 2,500. And so they calculate it on a numeric score. But I don't know the numerics of which of that, you know, 2,500 score is meets, exceeds. Yeah.
Just the new Department of Education is less transparent with their data. In the last 2 years, they hesitated to release the scores because they were not good across the state of California. And then this change with each CASP, they often don't give the numerical number of cutoff point for the cutoff point because they change it so often every year. And then it calls into question the questions on the test. So we do our best with this, but I did want to share that backside of that story.
That's outrageous.
It's out, yeah, it draws into question all of these results. But okay, can or maybe this is your next sentence, Terry. Can you relate the 3 numbers on the left to the chart on the right for me? Because students nearly, meaning we have a near standard sitting at 33 to 65, but it says 10%, and we've got students meeting or exceeding at 85, but none of those numbers even come close to 85. So how does the right-hand side relate to the left?
Well, Fiona, I'm gonna have to double check my numbers. I hear what you're saying, and I don't have a definitive answer as to why why the above and near standards are so different from the overall. We pulled those right from the CASP website. So let me just double check of how they calculated those to get back to you.
I'll have the same question on the math slide.
And I do want to say those numbers are similar to our overall numbers which are pulled from the CASP website, are similar to what we pulled from what's pushed out at CASP to us, which are just like individual numbers. And then, you know, they go into the student's SIS and then we query it. So the 85, 10, and 6 are comparative to what we have as a board indicator as well. But I need to get clarification on the claims and the differences there. So I'll get back to you. Thank you. So overall, I just want to say in regards to the meeting, not meeting, and nearly meeting, we have seen almost all demographics go up. The 2 demographics that did struggle, and I'm just looking at our board indicator on page 15, is our English language learners and our Latino regular ed were the 2 groups that decreased anywhere between 4% to 8%. So those are our 2 demographics with the SBAC ELA. Let me just looking through my notes. One school, we met to talk about SBAC 22-23 this year. And one school communicated a concern with the number of opt-outs that takes place at their school. It happened more at one than the other. The typical trend with the opt-outs was the AP test that happened 2 weeks later. And so concerns that their data might be skewed because certain level of students are not taking the test, so we may not be seeing the big picture for them. And we really talked about how are we communicating the importance of these scores to our students and families of taking this. And then also on our part, maybe we need to take a look at rescheduling this so it's not so back to back and we're not stressing our students out in two very important tests.
Tara, I would just add that this is an ancient problem.
Yes.
This happens every year.
Yes.
So the state is really trying to hold firm on that 95% taking rate, and that includes if you're opting out. They didn't do it this year, but they said that they're gonna start dinging numbers on your SBAC. For those who don't take it, they're counting those into the scores. And so all students will be accounted for one way or the other. Again, they didn't do it this year, but that's one of the, and unless you've heard anything different from them, that's one of the.
They could just make
links.
it a graduation requirement and solve the whole
There
problem.
you go.
There has been discussion of having this become some kind of standard for college admission. To have it go all the way up, but I think they're still working on it and it's not really ready to be that yet, but they had talked about having this replace some kind of SAT, ACT objective measure, not only to incentivize test taking, but just, I guess, to increase relevance.
So is the reason not to take it just because they don't want to take the test? Because you don't have to report it. Doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't, right, it doesn't matter to the students.
So it does in the sense that they could use, if they got,
Free or higher.
if then they can bypass certain fundamental classes in the CSU.
But if they didn't, it doesn't really matter.
That's
They don't have
correct.
to report it. So maybe we just need to make sure they know that. Just take the test.
That would be great.
Okay, I got it.
I think there's the, just the, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't want to sit through 2 hours, 4 days of test taking. We try to communicate the importance and that you got this and it's no stakes on your part, but the big contribution that you get is look at a great school, great furniture, great teachers. Why do you have this? It is one of many reasons, so we really try to communicate the benefits. So holistically they see it, but I hear what you're saying so that there's no fear. The other SBAC is our math, which again, we're very proud that we did not see any type of learning loss come from our students via the SBAC ELA or math. We also have seen continual growth in our SBAC scores. If you look at the SBAC section in your binder, it has longitudinal data that goes all the way 8 or 9 years ago. And almost every year you see incremental increases in our students achieving in the SBAC. And so again, I think that that's a testament to the teachers becoming very solid and comfortable teaching Common Core standards and style, as well as our students learning and their high level of learning and success. So just as a connection, we had 67% in 2017, all the way to 72% now. So some nice growth. But again, like our ELA, we did see our Latino regular ed students not perform as well. In fact, in 18-19, they were at 58% our population, and 2021, they achieved at 44% at exceed or meet standard. And so that's something that we really need to take a look at. And again, when I met with the 2 sites today, the assistant principals that work with me on SBAC, we talked about taking the data to the sites so we can do a deep dive, and we have those numbers at our fingertips, and they're under 80 students at each site. And so we can really easily jump in and start to ask some good questions.
Wouldn't that point to basically that we knew about distance learning during COVID, that, critical learners were the most impacted?
Yep,
right?
exactly.
Okay. So if that goes, aligns with that information probably, and I think we see that nationwide, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Well
I think
said.
it's be more interesting to see the data next year. Next year's data to see how it just, if it jumps back, because I don't know. I mean, there's nothing we can do about the COVID issue, so.
Well said. Thank you. My last math data point, and to be honest with you, it's not really apples to apples here, but I just wanted to do a touch point on 2 of our maths and just show, broad strokes, are populations achieving similarly, or are there big differences in one being more successful than the other? And we see no, there's common trends. But again, we got to be careful in looking at this data and asking why is the A to G completion of C or higher much higher than our SBAC math? Well, one, we use seniors in the Algebra 2, so they have an extra year of math. Juniors for SBAC. Seniors, we don't count all students, only those who took Algebra 2. And SBAC, we take a demographic of all students. And I would say, as assistant principal proctoring the SBAC, I had ELA students a month into school required to take the SBAC math and hardly having any kind of English language. And so, when we look at some of these scores, we have to remember that there's real people behind these numbers with real narratives that can make a lot of sense as to what are the opportunity gaps that has caused these numbers.
Yeah, I think just on that though, right? I mean, taking a standardized test is a different skill set than just taking the course, and doing the homework and getting those exams. So, and that's why, most studies that I've read indicate that grades are a better indicator of academic and college success than the standardized tests. So I think that's, to me, a big part of probably what we're seeing here. Because, the questions, the way questions are on tests, it's not always easy to interpret exactly what they're asking. And plus then, there's also time limits and all the other pressures along with that they don't necessarily feel when they take the course. So I think I think you're gonna, I can see that maybe you want to have some correlation here, but I think unless we, like the AP, like our AP courses, where they basically go through the exam, what the students during the course, right? And, review exam questions. So students are prepared for the AP tests, unless, we change our courses to be able to do that. I think, we may not see as much correlation as, I don't think we would see necessarily a correlation with it. I think that, or rather, maybe put another way, I think there always will be somewhat of a difference between the students that are passing Algebra 2 completion, for example, with a C or better, versus how well they do on the SBAC.
I agree. It's not apples to apples, as I said, and I was hesitant to put up these 2 slides to compare, but I couldn't agree with you more with your statements. Thank you. So I don't know what your slides are on the deck. Is your next slide like mine?
Yes.
Okay, so originally I had 3 or 4 slides that had GPA and grades, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to merge these together. There's too many. And so this is really showing how our students are doing in our classes. So our tall graphs are freshmen 2.0 or higher GPA. Again, fantastic. 95% of our freshmen have a 2.0 or higher. 2.0 or higher shows the trajectory of our students' success in high school, being able to meet graduation requirements on time. And so seeing our 95% is a lot to be proud of. And also it allows us to do a laser focus on those 5% of who are not and what are the interventions that we're immediately putting into place. Our green boxes are our overall 3.0 GPA for all students that is taken at the end of the year. And again, we're at 78%, so a lot to be proud of to have a 3.0 GPA in a prestigious public high school like MVLA. And the 3.0 is also a trajectory of being 4-year college bound. And so that's a really good data point for us to take a look at. And then lastly, freshmen no Fs, We're at 92% this year, and this really just helps us understand what are the classes that are the biggest challenges, or the classes that we need to be working with them on, or what are their trends so that they don't have the repeats of the Fs moving forward. What we've seen looking on the right-hand side is that we've had increases in all of these areas. 6% 2.0 GPA, 2% increase for 3.0 GPA, 3% for no Fs. And something to be proud of, and I know, it's still work in progress for us, but our highest gains are with our Latino and our EO populations. Specifically, if we look at the no Fs, we had a 22% increase in Latino ELs not receiving an F, one F. We had a 17% increase in our Latino SPEDs receiving no Fs, and 16% increase in our ELs and no Fs. And so a lot to be proud of for our students, our teachers, as well as the infrastructures that we've been providing and the professional learning for them in their classes. Jumping into
That's
attendance.
fantastic. That's really good news. It's really amazing.
Jumping into attendance, this is a nationwide issue right now. There is county offices and state education is really coming together to really try to put together resources and ways to support the school districts to fight this increase of attendance issues that we're seeing. We've seen over the last year a 3.5 decrease of attendance. The highest decrease in attendance that we've seen is with our Caucasian population. And I just want to clarify that attendance is any excused, excused, not excused, other, suspension, it all gets calculated as a non-absent or an absence. And then with our chronic absenteeism, which means you miss 15 days or more, that's an increase of 8.5%. And when you look at the two schools, there was a difference in which grades really stood out over the other. And so I wanted to spotlight that 11th to 12th graders had a higher chronic absentee rate, pretty significant higher than their freshman and sophomore counterparts at Mountain View. And 10th and 12th graders at Los Altos had a somewhat significantly higher chronic absentee than their 9th and 11th graders at Los Altos. So some interesting differences between the two. Why does attendance matter? Because if you're not in your seat, you're probably not learning. And so there's a direct correlation to attendance with learning, and quite honestly with mental health as well.
Is if a student misses just the first period, so they come late to school, how is that calculated in this attendance?
So this attendance would calculate individuals until it equals a day. So if you miss one, first period one day, first period the next, and then you go to 6 periods of missing for 6 days of missing one period, that would get calculated into that attendance there.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. Good. Thanks.
I do want to just note that we are not standing by and watching the wind blow with these attendance issues. Perla Pasayo put together an attendance team last year. Over the summer, Suzanne Woolfolk did a lot of work on interventions and revamped our attendance letters so that they're warm and encouraging for our students to come back. We want you here. And then our site administration jumped in and created these great tiers of interventions, and when are we doing what, and what's the restorative that we're bringing in. And so just again, going back to that all hands on deck, I love to see just that teamwork that the administration had and really trying to battle this issue. And I will be wrapping up.
Sorry.
So last couple data points, and that is under our value for wellness.
I just sorry, I just wanted to make one comment on that previous slide. So I think the point that you make, though, that one day would basically is calculated to be missed if we have students consistently miss that first period.
Right.
It would be good to know how many of our the attendance differences is due to students missing their first period. One thing that I from my experience with my children, that they are, they stay up pretty late studying, sometimes till about 1 a.m. Consistently, not just once in a while, but on a consistent basis. I don't know how true that is for, the whole district, but my guess is that's pretty true, that students are staying up pretty late studying. And so that's why some of them just need to sleep and getting up late and missing that first period. So I would just be curious to know if that's a factor.
That data is right at our fingertips. Aries pumps out which periods have the most absences, which days of the week have the most absences, and which months. So I could definitely share that with you guys in my report, my weekly report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
So total number of referrals going into wellness, and a referral is where somebody fills out our MVLA student wellness form, referral form, and it gets submitted, and the intake coordinator does a check-in. We have seen from 1819, 1920, all the way to 2021, a decrease in the number of referrals that are submitted. What we don't have the data here, but has been spoken to us last year, is that there's been less referrals coming in, but the acuity of those referrals have been much higher than they have been in the past. So a lot more time and resource intensive as they've seen. And then the right graph is just showing what are our contacts with students in terms of being able to provide wellness interventions. A check-in is either there's a referral or there's concern that was brought up on a student, and the therapist just pulls the student in occasionally to do a quick check-in, but doesn't have sessions set up with them. Intake screening comes from our actual social work / therapist. Crisis intervention includes anything from doing a risk assessment to a student that perhaps, became homeless, as an example, to a student blowing up and just not being able to be in class that day. And so we have to pull a therapist in and work with them. We call those crisis interventions.
Hey, Terry, really quick on wellness. In the binder, starting at page 120, and we don't have to do a lot with it, but Alta is included for 2021 and 2022. That's the first quarter, and then for total referrals for last year and the year prior. And there are no numbers for the 2 years prior to that. Do we just not have that data, or did we only start tracking it, or did Alta blow up? Or
nope, you're absolutely correct in that we are building our data collection system.
Okay.
And we started with our comprehensives and really started to calculate our referrals and our types of referrals and our types of contact and who does what in terms of therapists. And then last year we started to extend that into Alta Vista. And so I would say, use those numbers sparingly, because we're really at this point building our own wellness data collection system. And you're absolutely right. It just started at Alta Vista.
okay, and these numbers up top on your current slide have a little star saying no, not Alta Vista, and not. Okay. Yep, understood. Thank you.
And it just jumps out at me, and I know there are confidentiality issues, but the percentage of the parent contact is considerably low. And I just wanted to share that. That's interesting.
But what do you mean? What can you?
You mean that the parent initiated it?
Yes.
So that percent, what does that mean?
So I was just curious about
That
that.
parent called us, or
I
Called us, or we called the parent.
let me check in with William to get clarification on the parent contact. I would bet that it is us referring out to them in terms of not just getting the waiver sign that says I know my child is getting support, but has reached out in terms of needing some sort of other type of support, like family therapy, family support, family resources.
If that is the case, then.
But let me do it.
Okay.
But let me do a fact check with William on that.
Because the slide in here says that parent guardian
The referral.
Yes,
Parent
yeah.
guardians were 9.3%.
Yeah, that's not a referral, that's us contacting, but it's just clarifying what the contact.
And that's where it struck me, if we are contacting, it seems low, but just a question.
Is it possible to compare these numbers to other districts?
Yeah, so these numbers are our personal numbers. Some districts don't even, do referrals in this sense. I know William has a really nice network from other districts that we talk about our various programs. And I can definitely have him reach out and ask if they do any kind of data collection similar to ours and obtain it. And if so, I'll be happy to ask that he kind of help clean it up and share it with you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. The next wellness, the last wellness data point is our California Healthy Kids Survey. This survey, just a reminder, is for our freshmen and 11th graders, and they take the survey every other year. It's a pretty intensive survey. It takes like 45 minutes to complete. Your binder gave a little bit more description and some more graphs and charts that explains some of the figures behind it. But these are, our broad brushstrokes. What we've seen positively is that there's an increased report of feeling safe on campus. There's a decreased report of feeling bullied or harassed on campus. And our deltas, or our areas that we really need to work on, is our mental health, our sadness and hopelessness. And those are students reporting feeling chronically sad, life satisfaction, optimism, easily irritated or hard to get excited about something. Our academic engagement motivation, these are students that don't really try hard in class. They're not interested in school. They think school is boring. They don't feel like school is really relevant to what they do. And these are even our students that are getting A's in this class. This isn't one demographic that's having this motivation issue. And then connectedness, feeling close to somebody, feeling happy about coming to school, feeling like they belong at school and a part of, I do feel that we're doing a lot to support the mental health.
Some of this is attributed to the pandemic too.
It's nationwide. It's not us on our own. Yes.
Kind of hard to distinguish.
And at the same time, I think, it continues to make us ask the question, if we're doing all of this for wellness, and, I can go through the laundry list, what could we do more? And is it really taking a look at our system instead of,
And what is working?
And looking at our wellness centers and what we're going to do there, and then how even now with implementing portables and whatever we're doing to encourage kids. I think it's all being proactive if we can.
well said.
And we're doing some research on what other districts, we talked about this in another category too. Research on what other districts are doing
For the wellness centers?
or anything that we.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's it.
In wellness centers.
Yes. So lastly, and I'll just fast forward because we're done with the data. Part of supporting the growth and the excellence of our students are making sure that we're supporting our teachers with strong professional learning and helping them grow in their skills. Our three big areas that we've been working on over the last years and will continue is discipline-specific literacy, equitable grading, and culturally responsive learning and inclusivity. Those weren't things that we just thought, hey, this sounds good, why not go in this route? This was really thoughtful data reflection, data-driven decisions. We took a look at our board indicators of who's having the challenges. We took a look at our LCAT plan. We took a look at our SELPA, as well as who are the students that maybe are overrepresenting in our special education program. Who has access to 504s? What is our LPAC data? What is our reclassification data? And then we also did the qualitative data. What are our students and our parents saying? And when we took all of this into account and we did our research and best practices, and we really found that these were our three focused areas that, if done with fidelity, if done with longevity, with monitoring and accountability, and it's not a one and done, but it's a continuum, that we will start to see, we'll continue to see those needles move and that gap become even closer instead of the inch that we see. So in wrapping up, overall, we did see challenges with our attendance nationwide, but still it's an issue that we're tackling. We continue to see a gap in our A to G completion with underrepresented students. That's getting supported with our expanding credit recovery programs amongst other programs and work that our teachers and staff are doing. We need to improve our opportunities to work closely with our partner districts. Overall, again, we see a gap with our Latino students compared to our Asian and Caucasian counterparts. A lot of factors that creates that gap, and that's where our professional learning comes into place of closing that opportunity, that expectation, that stereotype threat that goes on. And lastly, another challenge is occasionally we see a difference in performance of not necessarily a challenge. This is our area of growth. of allowing both schools the opportunity to collaborate with one another and learn from one another and build from one another. And that's where we want this admin council to be a place, as well as they have their meetings on their own. But great things are happening at the site and sharing those best practices, just like we asked our course teams to do in course team meetings. We see a big success or change that happens when we have that opportunity to share. So what are we celebrating? Graduation rates, 2.0 GPA and no Fs. 3.0 GPA. I won't read all the sub bullets. Even though we have some work to do in our A to G completion, we are still really strong in that area. SPEC scores continue to be strong despite everything that's happened over the last 2 or 3 years. AP scores have recovered from the pandemic, which we did see a dip take place. Students are reporting that they feel safe and that bullying has decreased, and that our professional learning and the decisions that we're doing are really grounded in the data and the evidence that says this is the right direction we need to move. So Dr. Meyer gave me 15 minutes and I snuck another 15 minutes.
Sure did.
Oh, wait, the very last one, there was a,
Top schools, I mean.
oh, you took it out.
What was it?
It used to say beef up.
My,
I have no
one of
idea
my
what
teammates
beef up
wrote
is.
that and I was like, what does that mean? And so I deleted it.
Okay.
Well,
Like the bird cloud, the high quality educated top schools, Bravo, you know, it used to say beef up, and I'm like beef up. Like we do,
Beef up.
So, okay,
Original.
and it's gone, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to thank the work of Terry and the Ed Services team, very thorough, comprehensive report. I'd also like to thank this wonderful group behind me. And we look forward to hearing the specifics at the next meeting, but it really is all part of all of the work that each of us do every day. And it's not easy and it hasn't been easy, but you can see it's been very productive and benefited students. So we're happy to do it and happy.
We could do 2 hours next time, you guys. I mean, we would love to talk to you about this forever. too.
Yes, we can, yeah,
Do a lot longer,
yeah.
then you could actually breathe and maybe take a drink of water.
Yeah.
And maybe some things were irrelevant, right? And you're like, you could have skipped through that and expanded on something else.
I think
So-
we could talk about a lot of that more.
I think we really do need a little more.
We need more
But
time.
I do want to say, that was a virtuoso performance.
So, yeah.
for one of the times.
Yes.
Bravo.
As I said, I will have more questions in writing later or week, and I know other people may or may not have checked the questions that they asked and are gonna ask now that it's on their thinking at this meeting. I hope, I shouldn't say that. I was hoping though that there's no comments or from the public or their cousin.
We just decided to Terry was very important, so.
Do it? Nope, okay, hearing none, I will adjourn this study session at 6:03.
Thank you. Great.